Hello everybody, welcome back to another Conversations with Projektor. Today we start with the topic, which DAW am I using for mixing? Which DAW is this? This is Reaper. This is a $60 DAW focused towards mixing. So it allows you to import a lot of different files, a lot of different big wave files, which you can see over here. This is like, I guess like 15 gigabytes maybe of files in total. And it just handles that, where other DAWs struggle. So this is very nice for mixing.
A few moments later.
Which DAW is this? This is Reaper. $60. It's massively powerful, specifically designed for mixing. You can also produce in it. It's probably very capable for production. I've never done that. I just load in audio files and mix them. And it's much better for mixing than Ableton. Like, it doesn't compare.
Everything is so new to me.
You don't necessarily have to do it this way, the way that I'm mixing. I think I've explained this many times before in any mixing content that I make, any time that I have like Reaper visible during video or during the stream. But the reason why I do it is I like to really separate the mixing stage and the production stage. Most people don't work that way because they like to actually go back into production and fix things that they hear in the mix once they establish their mix. But I find that that really slows down my work, like my workflow, and it doesn't allow me to commit to anything. And secondly, here I am doing all of the volume balances again based on normalized volume, which would be really hard to do in the production project because you would need to manually go through every track and then normalize each track. And then only then can you actually start the mixing process if you want to use that normalization technique that I'm doing here. I like to do that because, as I said again, it forces me to listen to every sound and make sure that it has the volume balance that I want it to have. Do I check for clicks when importing files? Do you check every track for clicks/mistakes, or do you check them before importing them into your mix session? When it comes to like clicks and stuff like that, I don't really check for that, like on an individual track basis and stuff like that. Whenever there is a click that is noticeable to me, I remove it obviously, and I do like listen for that when I'm mixing, but it's not something that I'm actively like searching through the waveform or anything like that. And I do sometimes have to like re-render something or fix something in the production, and obviously then I do it. But that's usually something that I hear during the mixing process. Do I normalize the files when exporting? Do you export the tracks from the production project as they are in terms of peak levels, or do you normalize everything? I normalize everything. So that's why I had to turn everything down by 8 dB, as you can see over here. And what that means is that I get to reestablish the volume balance between all of the elements, which is one of the big things of mixing, right? Is the balance of volumes between all of the elements. And the reason why I do that is during the production process, I may make an element a certain loudness, and then I continue to add 15 other elements on top of that like section that it's in, and then the volume may not necessarily be exactly where I want it to be, but I would never address it if it's like not really needed, right? In this case, because I'm normalizing everything, I have to go into each individual track and say like, okay, what is the volume that I need this to be? Which means that I have to actively think about each volume essentially in the track. Do I ever delete sounds when mixing? Does it ever occur that you end up deleting an unimportant sound in the mixing stage, or is that an absolute no-no? It's very rare for that to happen, but yeah, sometimes if I feel like, okay, this sound is actively making the track worse in this spot, then yeah, I just won't keep it and I'll immediately delete it. But 99.9% of the time, if a sound is like, I don't know if this works in the track, I usually can find a way to kind of blend it in a way that it still just like slightly excites the track, as opposed to just plainly deleting it completely. I do actually spend quite a lot of time in the production. Usually all of those sounds, by the end of the production, I figured them out. Because what I end up doing most of the time is I have like a final checklist in the production before I go into mixing. That way I kind of finalize the whole project. And that means that anytime that there is a sound that I'm like meh about, I'll catch it in that stage as opposed to the mixing stage itself. Of course, when the mix is actually like getting shape, there's always the possibility of a sound kind of slipping through that you didn't hear before, that it isn't really the sound that you're going for. But most of the time, all of the sounds that I want in the track are in the track, and towards the end of the production, I'll go through all of the track, and any sounds that I'm just not happy with how the sound sounds, it gets deleted then, as opposed to in the mixing stage.
The Waves SSL compressor.
SSL compressor, yes. This the one that I use is the Waves SSL comp stereo. It sounds really good. I'm not sure how close it is to the actual thing. I've never used a real SSL. That mouse taught me not to put it on the kick drum, so I never use it on my kick drum, but other than that, I use it quite a lot. I think it's a very nice sounding compressor. It's nice to just shape off a few dB and have that kind of constant compression going. As you can see here, the compressor never returns to zero compression, right? It's always compressing a little bit at least, but it's still variable. So what it's going to do is it's going to slightly glue everything together and make it sound a little bit more cohesive.
My 2 cents on the kick tuning debate.
That mouse also taught me that kicks. Yes. The kick drum does not have a pitch, is his idea. And you can agree or disagree. I agree in the way that I do my kicks, but I can also see the appeal of having a kick that is in key, especially for sidetrans, because it allows you to do the traditional phase alignment that you guys do. I don't do it because I'm a special boy. But yeah, normally you would need to have your kick in key with the bassline for the part that aligns with the bassline if you want to properly phase align stuff.
Why don't I use Soothe 2?
Have you tried Soothe 2? That shit is awesome. To be honest, I fairly rarely find myself in need of any dynamic resonance suppression. I don't have Soothe 2, but I do have the Melda variant of that kind of tool. The Spectral Dynamics one, which looks very simple, but it isn't, as you can see here. So this basically does the same thing as Soothe, but I have a lot more control over exactly how I want it to capture the resonances and compress them. So I can set exactly like, okay, for this first processor, I want very heavy compression on a very high threshold. You would normally have the dry wet all the way up, and then you have like smoothness and that kind of stuff. And then maybe I want another compressor a little bit lower, which is just slightly removing or it has a lower ratio, right? So I can really manually almost dial in the way that I want my version of Soothe to work. To be honest, I might use this once every 3 tracks in terms of mixing. It's such a rare that a resonance is so prominent, like that you need to remove the resonance in a dynamic way, right? Because if there's a normal resonance in a sound, you just EQ it out. You just use an EQ for that. You just go EQ, and you say like, okay, where's the resonance? We find the resonance like this, and you just go bang, right? This is much faster of a workflow. There's very rarely that I want this kind of removal of a resonance that is only there most of the time, or it reacts dynamically. And even then, if it's just one resonance, I just use a dynamic EQ. Because the problem with Soothe is that you can overuse it without really noticing. The problem with Soothe is that the resonances, in essence, are what make a sound unique. It's what gives it sound its character. If you remove all of the resonances, it becomes really hard to get that character back again. I don't really hear it all the time, but you sometimes hear this kind of overuse of Soothe, and everything sounds very flat and plasticky and boring and sterile almost. There's no like character to it. You know what I mean?
It is great for mixing vocals with lead synths by using the vocals as a sidechain input, because you can specifically target frequency clashes if they occur because of frequency overlap.
Yeah, I guess that's the case, but again, in that case, you can use a dynamic EQ and achieve the same thing. And it's essentially just faster to set it up, because you just set up a band and say, okay, I want this, maybe not that big of an area, but I want this area to be ducked down dynamically to the sidechain. In my opinion, this workflow is a little bit faster, but at the end of the day, do what you want. If you get good results with Sooth, then that's good for you. Whatever works for me might not work for you. I've just found that I rarely need a tool like Sooth, or specifically Sooth in this case. I've never used Sooth, so maybe if I get Sooth, I would use it all the time. But from what I've seen about the plugin and from some of the audio comparisons that I've heard, and specifically heard some people in a mixing session or when they're using it, when they're producing, when they're in a live stream or something like that, I've heard it, how it sounds overused, and it just drains the soul out of particular sounds.
I use Track Spacer for that.
I've heard bad things about Track Spacer in particular, in that it's really CPU heavy for that kind of stuff, unless you really limit it to a certain frequency area. But I don't know if that's true. That might be false. It seems like the kind of process that would consume a lot of CPU, because it's like spectral stuff. You need to do a Fourier transform back and forth in order to get the actual thing that you want to process, which is not necessarily an actual sound, but it's the Fourier transform representation of the sound, which is very technical talk of you basically split up all of the frequencies and have control over the individual sine waves that make up the sound, as opposed to the sound as a whole. I haven't noticed much CPU usage with Track Spacer, or maybe the earlier version suffered from that, not sure. Yeah, that can be the case. It's always possible that they find a way to massively improve an algorithm like that over time, but I've heard that once or twice. It might have also been the case that the person using it was just using like a very low power CPU or something like that.
My relative volume tricks for groups and buses.
So we introduced this one over here. I'm going to lower this by like 5. I always do this relatively speaking. So for example, here we have the 2 van sequence group. I'm turning down the volume on the group, which means that already these volumes are going to be also lowered to the same level as the main one. But then I can set relative volume. And because I'm using the main part of the sequence, the thing that I think will be the loudest, there's a very small chance that I would find myself not turning these down. And if I do need to turn these up, what I do is I kind of carry that over. So let's say that in a mixing session, I find myself turning this up by like, let's give it a nice round 2 dB. Oh, plus. You can see I'm automatically typing in a minus, because that's how I usually work. But let's say that I end up with a situation like this. I just carry this over. So I would go in here and then do -2, -2. And then I can set this to 0. But I can always quickly rectify something like that. But usually it's just, okay, I've set the volume based on the main one. I like that volume, and I turn these down respectively.
How I treat faulty renders in the mix.
There's definitely like a swipe in here, but that's not the main kind of clickiness that I hear. I mean, it's definitely annoying that that swipe is in there, because it feels like that swipe is towards the mid-range, a little bit lower. It goes wah-chuk. So this might be something that I want to fix in the production, which means that I'm just going to set to custom color just like a bright red for now. This is how I know that there's something that I need to like actually fix about that track, that there's something that I need to go back and re-render something. It just means that I have to just edit the sample there a little bit. Those are the kind of things that only really become apparent once you start doing the mixing and start to listen to each individual element. And that's another reason why I like to add them like this.
How I judge sounds when adding them to the mix.
By the way, I don't think I mentioned it, but the way that I'm currently kind of like judging the sounds is not necessarily fully in the mix, like I'm soloing a lot of things, as you can hear. That's just so that I can have each sound the way that I kind of want it. And then the real, like, proper mixing is going to happen later on when actually all of the sounds are in there, right? Because now, again, we don't really have the full context of the track yet, so a lot of decisions you cannot really fully make. So it's better to just try to get every sound to kind of perform the way that you want it to, as opposed to perform the best possible in the mix. And then once all of the tracks are added, you start kind of combining everything together and see if there's clashes and errors between the files that make it so that you need to change things. Most of the time, I tend to get very close with just initially listening to the sounds. Like, I'm pretty happy with how sounds tend to combine once I'm like done with the initial thing. And it tends to be that I'm mainly focusing on like the bigger picture as opposed to nitty-gritty details in individual sounds.
A viewer has exciting news.
I have exciting news. I was supposed to start this week, but I fell ill, so next week my classes will start in an advanced music production course. Cool. That's very cool. I hope you enjoy it. I was unfortunate enough that my course wasn't for me, but if it's like proper production, then it's probably more applicable to what you might want to do as like an artist. Because the unique course that I started was like musical engineering, all of the stuff behind audio. So, for example, the big example that I always give is that I had to study how a mixing console worked in terms of its electronic circuit, but I never got to use an actual mixing console. That was kind of like a big annoyance that I had with that course. But if it's not like that, then it's probably going to be very useful.
I can't resample the kick in my mix.
Honestly, I would just resample the kick and copy the arrangement. I mean, I think this is faster, because there's definitely issues with doing that, because this has the filtering and the volume and stuff like that built into it. So we need to spend a lot of time reproducing that. And in here, all I need to do is just cut out the LFO here for one. And we saw on the analyzer that, like, actually the effect of phase shift that we have is minimal on here, right? Let me show you. Like, the thing that we are removing is this little bit over here, right? To be honest, I don't even think you would need to remove that. Like, this is not that big of an issue that it's going to actually cause issues down the line once we get into mastering and stuff like that. I just prefer to work cleanly, and for that reason I use the LFO tool to clean it up, and that's what the LFO tool is essentially doing. And just for that, there's a few kicks in here. I just turn off the LFO tool and not really care about that little bleeding that might be in there.
What's in my masterclass?
Another question before you leave: your masterclass is focused on Ableton only, or use other plugins and this DAW? It is focused on my workflow. So yes, I use a lot of plugins. I use this DAW as well. There's like 7 hours, not 7. How much is there? We can check. Give me a second. I'll pop up the chapters and I'll walk through it. So these are the chapters, and then, so not 7 hours, but like 6 hours here. The initial mix and final mix, these two chapters are in Reaper. So you'll have this DAW over here, which, by the way, this DAW is only $60. So it's not like you would need to go out and buy this DAW to follow it, actually, because I just explain my workflow. I explain how I do the things, not necessarily like, oh, you're in the DAW, click this button to have it, click that button to do that. It's not like that, right? It's more like, what am I actually doing? What is the grand scheme of things? But even if you wanted to follow the masterclass, you spend $60 to have this DAW, and you could work with this DAW. But just to answer your question, yes, my DAW or my masterclass isn't solely focused on Ableton. It includes a lot of plugins. It includes this DAW over here. It will most certainly include some plugins that you don't have. It will most certainly include some samples that you don't have. It will most certainly include some other things that you might not have. But overall, it's the goal of the masterclass is not for you to precisely be able to follow everything. And the reason why I say that is not a few years back, because the masterclass has only been on for a year, but I guess a year ago now, then somebody actually like tried that to completely follow my masterclass, like step by step. And they noticed that at some points I just cut out parts of a process, right? Like I would say, okay, now I need a synth sound. And I would say, okay, there's a cut. And then I would have a finished serum patch. And then I would kind of like quickly explain the patch. But I would not go over it setting by setting, Because if I had done that, the masterclass would have been, instead of 24 hours of video footage, it would have been 3 times that, right? I just cannot go over every setting that I do while I'm making a track. Like, I cut a lot of footage out just so that you have a nicer experience actually watching it, and the pacing is such that it is easy to learn from. Because it can be the case that with tutorials, but any kind of educational content, that you're too slow and that people just find it boring and they'll never finish actually watching the thing that you're doing. So that's another consideration. There's a lot of different things to balance when you're doing educational content, especially when you're doing a masterclass that is meant to last for 24 hours the way that I had it. I didn't exactly plan to kind of hit that 24-hour mark. In fact, I didn't hit it. It's 23 hours and 56 minutes. And I'm kind of sad about that. Like, my OCD, when I saw the final video length all summed together in the Windows details, it gives you if you have a bunch of video files selected, it gives you the final length of all video files combined. When I saw that I was like 4 minutes off 24 hours, I was like, that's annoying. I technically cannot put it in the marketing material that's 24 hours now, because that would be false advertising, technically. So I didn't. I always say it's almost 24 hours. But it's almost 24 hours by 4 minutes. But yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, making it digestible. And also, if you get a product that takes 72 hours of your time just watching it, it's much bigger task for people to go through it, right? It would just take a lot longer for you to digest all of the information just naturally, because there's like 3 times more footage for you to watch. So when it comes to that masterclass, it is meant for you to kind of pick up on the workflow that I have and I guess that's like the initial time that you watch it, and then the second and third time, if you watch it multiple times, you might pick up on more of the like little detail things that I do. But the main idea is that, yeah, you get my workflow and you see all of the main things that I do to make sure that the track comes out the way that I want it to come out. And that's also how I tend to explain things. As I said, I don't go through an individual patch. Of course, for the kick and for the bass, I do that. And for some of the synth sounds, I also do that. But for many of the sounds, I don't go through the exact patch and explain step by step how to make every patch. That's not the goal of the masterclass. It's not the goal for you to kind of copy the track. For that reason, I decided to do it like that.
Does having a different DAW matter?
They teach using Fruity Loops, Head Scratch, but I just switched to Bitwig, so it all feels like a brand new ocean to dive into. I mean, both of those softwares are very, very complex. I think FL Studio is very underrated for how complex of a DAW it actually is. Like how much stuff you can actually do in it. So I can definitely see it being used for advanced music production techniques and a course on something like that. That would definitely make sense. But Bitwig as well, I mean, Bitwig is very capable too. And it should be fairly easy to apply the theory, at least from one to the other.
I'm still using Reason Intro.
I mean, as long as you're just doing what you like, it doesn't really matter. Different ocean, but it's still water. Exactly. I mean, it's a good way to describe the mindset behind it. It's not really the tools that matter, it's your usage and how you can apply, I guess, what you learn in one DAW to the other if you're using a different tool. Even for tutorials, I don't really get how a tutorial made in Ableton could not be applied to somebody using FL Studio, unless you're using an Ableton instrument, right? Something that is just not in a different DAW. But even an Ableton compressor, it's going to work the same way as the FL Studio compressor. They're all like stuck stuff. A DAW is a DAW, they all do the same thing. Exactly. Bitwig has a nice UI, the UI of Reason is confusing and not so fast. Yeah, I guess that's the big downside of some DAWs towards other DAWs. But even then, you tend to get used to the workflow that the DAW provides for you. For example, I know I'm a lot faster inside of Ableton than I ever was inside of FL Studio. But back in the day when I was using FL Studio, it felt still like I was working very, very fast, right? I didn't feel like the DAW was holding me back in any kind of way. Never been a fan of DAWism where people try to frantically convince you to switch DAW. It tends to be the Bitwig users that do that in my experience. They are very passionate about their DAW. And to some sense, I do agree with them that Bitwig is better in the long run. The problem with switching DAWs, especially for somebody like me who makes content on a daily basis and who just needs to have an output for both music, but more importantly, like video content, is that I cannot spend really the time learning a new DAW, because it takes, for me to get to the point where I'm in Ableton now in terms of my workflow, it will just take me a couple of months at least to get as fast. And even then, there's going to be all of the small tricks that I've built up over the years in Ableton that I'm going to miss, right? I might have some preset stuff. I might have, for example, the menu that I use in Ableton to quickly get my plugins in there. I believe Bitwig has a very similar thing in the way that you add plugins, but when I used it, it was slower than the menu is, because that menu is just incredibly fast, right? I know exactly where everything is, and all of that muscle memory, I would need to build that up again in a new DAW. What people don't take into account when they talk about switching DAWs to save time in your workflow is all of the time you lose by converting. Because for somebody like me who does like the content and all of that stuff, I cannot stop uploading videos for a month, learn a new DAW, and then start to get into it. FL Studio has so many amazing plugins that I would have to abandon if I switch DAWs. That's exactly what I mean. That 5% gain is only going to, in speed increase, is only going to come after months of building up that muscle memory, of getting all of the things set up that you need, getting all of your sample packs imported, your plugins installed in the new DAW, all of the defaults that you have set up in the new DAW, all of that stuff has to be built up from scratch again. And there's no easy way to convert either. I think between Ableton and Bitwig, it's a little bit less because they are very similar in the way that they work. But even there, something as minimal as the browser being on the right side in Bitwig as opposed to the left side in Ableton, that's going to throw you off for a few weeks. Because every time you're like, oh, I need a sample, you're going to go, I need to go in here for a sample. And then you scroll down and then like you realize, oh no, wait, the samples are actually over here. That's going to take a while to get used to that new idea. Bitwig seems awesome, but I prefer sticking to my old trusty familiar DAW. Exactly. It's almost a sunk cost fallacy, but there is an actual cost into switching. I don't know if that makes sense. Because the sunk cost fallacy, it does exist. But in this case, I do think that there's an actual cost to switching.
Something amazing MeldaProductions did.
I did contact them. They changed the RTO price for the complete bundle, but it only means pay less but pay longer. Oh, you should have been there. Did I put it in the chat when they had their Christmas sale or the end of the year sale? I got almost $1,000 off my total bundle in terms of the price that I would need to pay because of the sale. Because the way, I think I talked about this in one of the other conversations with Projektor videos. What Melda did is they ran a sale, and in order to not kind of screw up the people that were continuously paying them, they allowed you to convert your subscription into a sale by paying off the difference between what you had paid in subscription and the sale price. So that means that I had paid two instances of the subscription, the annual subscription, which is $500 a year. That is quite a lot, but you consider that the bundle is $2K, so you just pay it off over 4 years. I believe at the full price, something like that. But the sale made it to $1K and $50 or something like that. So what I ended up paying for the bundle was, so I just had paid my subscription, my second year of subscription, and that meant that I was at $1,000, and the sale was and the sale would be for $1,050. So I just paid them $50, and then I got the whole bundle, and now I'm no longer in their subscription. I no longer pay the subscription because I converted it into having purchased the bundle. Maybe they'll do that next year again, and then you can just pay it off as well. But I believe I even put that in the Discord, like now is the time to do that. Back when that was happening. But maybe you've missed it, or maybe I forgot to put it in there. That can also be the case. Sort of transforming existing sub to a rent to buy on the spot. No, because I think even the subscription model that they have is like rent to own or rent to buy or whatever you call it. Right, and that I would need to pay the subscription for 4 years, and then I would have had paid off the full price of the bundle. But because they had the sale going on, they essentially gave me the sale as well, and they include within the sale price the part that I already paid to them. I could have chosen the option to pay less, but rather pay more and be done sooner. That's understandable. Yeah, I understand that something like paying 2K for a plugin bundle is very expensive, so you would have that in installments of less. To be honest, what I would do in such a case as a company is just make like a flexible subscription bundle, so that, let's say that you need to pay 2K to pay off the entire bundle, right? You can say, oh, I don't want to pay 2K in one instance, but I might want to pay $500 now, and in 2 months I have another $200 that I can put towards it, so that you can kind of slowly build up the payment that you have until you have paid off that 2K, and then you own the plugin bundle. Because does it really matter if the income that you get is exactly $500 once a year at the specific date? Or if people just say like, oh, now I have a little bit of money that I can put towards the plugin bundle, and in 2 months I have another bit of money that I can put towards the plugin bundle. I don't really think that would matter a lot for a company, right? I guess the benefit of the subscription is that you know that you're going to have a steady form of income for at least 4 years. The only way that you would limit that is that you would need to pay at least $500 a year then, if you want to have that stability as Melda. It would mean that you would have at least $500 a year, but maybe even more income from that individual owner for a year, and then they can choose to pay it off faster, essentially. It is still nice of them. Yeah. It is very nice of them to do that. They had no reason to do that, in my opinion. Like, I don't even know why I was on the website. I was just kind of there, and I saw that was available, and I was like, hey, wait a second. I can just do that. I can just pay off my bundle right now.
My shorts are loved and unsuccessful.
I love your YouTube shorts. Thank you. I'm glad you love them. That's why I make them. I'm actually working on a new idea for some of the YouTube shorts, because I've noticed over the last month the shorts have been performing much worse. I've made a community post about that as well. So I am experimenting with a slightly new idea. I'm not going to say anything about that yet, but you guys will see once it comes out how it is. TikTok girls with a twist is a genius move. Thank you. It's just that they're hard to find, and they get harder to find because I don't just want to follow one account and just continuously use the same person, I guess. I think the fact that it's not the same person adds to the surprise. Like, it's not the same person every time, that adds to the surprise of it being me that is responding to something. Speaking about shorts, I have to film more shorts tonight because I'm actually out of them. This might be one of the sounds that I would use for one of the coming shorts, actually. I don't know if I featured it in a very old short, but I haven't produced a lot lately, and I haven't worked on any new track ideas. And that usually makes it very hard to find good ideas for shorts. I just did not have a lot of time in the last few weeks because I have been working very hard on kind of reinventing the way that I'm making my own content. Like mainly the long format videos, because I've noticed that even though, as I said, my short views are down by quite a lot, my overall engagement with the channel and, for example, the people buying products and stuff like that, it hasn't had any impact. So that means that my shorts aren't the key to the success of my channel in that way. So I should probably focus on growth in the long format videos and stuff like that. So that's where I am focusing now, and I'm trying to work a little bit more to getting a system in place that just naturally produces better videos. So hopefully that will increase just the quality of my videos, and from there it will also induce a little bit more growth, the growth that I used to get from the shorts, because you would grow in terms of like subscribers and stuff like that, but they were not the kind of subscribers that tended to stick around and watch everything like you guys do.
You might not know YouTubers have these problems.
Starting to sound nice. I like all of the things that we've added so far. I'm going to wrap up the stream though for today. I have other things that I need to do, because otherwise you guys don't have a short to watch tomorrow. I still have to record all of the shorts, and then tomorrow morning I'll edit and post them. Actually, tomorrow morning I'll edit them and post the first one, and then tomorrow afternoon I'll finish editing and post the rest. It usually takes me a lot of time because I hate editing shorts. It's, I think, some of the worst work that I have to do for the channel, but shorts are very, very beneficial for my channel, so I'll keep doing them. And I like my end product of them. None of the part of creating shorts is fun. Like, I much rather create another long format video, but shorts just do very well and they push a lot of traffic to my channel. And I like the end products that I'm creating. I just don't like making it because, for one, I record them in bulk. So I always have to do 15 at the time or like 20 at the time in terms of the editing. So it gets very boring, right? It's always the same thing over and over and over again for 20 times. And two, all of the problems that I have recording normal content seems to be exaggerated with shorts because I also have to like stay within the 1 minute time frame. So what that means is I need relatively large amount of takes. You can even hear it now that I have a little bit of trouble just kind of speaking naturally and continuously having almost like a conversation here. When you're doing that in shorts, in order to get that conversational flow and have the short kind of work well in terms of it being one thing, as opposed to you having, okay, here's a sentence cut, here's a sentence cut, here's a sentence cut. That recording process is relatively long for the amount of content that I get. It's annoying to film them because every time that I make a mistake during the filming, I have to keep in mind what my like inflections were when I was speaking, like the way I was speaking, the kind of cadence that I had, the kind of tone that I had through the sentence, and I have to try to recreate that. And anytime that I don't get that, it is immediately noticeable and I hate myself for doing it. I have a whole bunch, like almost every time that I have a short, I will watch it on my phone as well, obviously to make sure that everything is correct and that there's no issues there. And anytime that it happens where I notice that there's like a weird cadence in it, either in the edit or in when I'm doing the watching on my phone, I just hate myself for it because I notice these small details and I want to continuously improve my stuff and my content. I guess that's just natural. I guess that's just the way that YouTube works. But I do really like the end result that I get. The one short you did where the end is leading to the beginning over and over. When you watch it, it's like one video that was really cool. I tried doing more of that. That's another thing, right? Because in that case, what you would need to do is you would need to kind of non-linearly record, in the sense that you start in the middle somewhere and then you record towards the end, and then you record the beginning upwards towards the middle, so that the kind of like transition shifts, right? It's not the beginning of the short, which allows you to get that effect of the end of the short seemingly transitioning back into the beginning of the short. All of the problems that I just talked about are exaggerated when you're doing that, if you also have to think about the short in a non-linear way. Like, the recording process is different from the editing process, and then you have to move things around in the editing software, and it makes it even harder. I do understand what you mean, and I might do more of them, but it's the most annoying way to record the shorts, to be honest. And I do like the other things that I have as well, where I have the intro and stuff like that. I might do some of those, now that you're mentioning it, I might do some of those for the shorts that don't have the intro, because I alternate, right? I have a normal one, and then the way that I call them within my workflow is I have the normal short, and then I have the fun short. And they kind of alternate. So one is mainly meant for reaching as big of an audience as possible because they're funny, right? They just reach more people, have a little bit of a laugh, and then they tend to watch longer. And then the other shorts are more for those fans of the shorts that really want some information out of them. So in the normal ones, I try to explain a bit more.
My chat is too slow to have conversations.
You leave the peak like that? Well, was behind on the stream. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about either. It's part of that maybe because you were behind, but it's generally the case that when people start talking in the stream, I have a little bit of a hard time figuring out what they talk about sometimes because of the stream delay that we have, right? Because there is like a minute delay. And it usually tends to be the case that once people realize what I'm talking about, they take a little bit of time to chat. So it takes like 2 minutes for a message about the subject to come back to me. And in that time, I've moved on to something else, or I've continued any discussion that we may have had.
My internet issues make me paranoid when streaming.
Funnily enough, even though we have streamed a little bit less time, like half an hour less and we had consistently like half the viewers of the last stream, we still have roughly the same amount of total views coming from the stream, which is interesting. Like I would expect half the views then as well, but it seems to be like it's not entirely the same. Like I believe the last stream was 200, but we're now at 169. Nice, by the way. It's just funny that for some reason maybe it counts it differently, or people. I'm kind of, the reason why I bring it up is I'm kind of scared that there is a connection issue and that people have issue coming into the stream and that they continuously like try to enter the stream and that therefore the view count goes up. I don't think that that's the case, because it has seemed like it looks stable to me now, right? We had a few issues at the beginning of the stream, like 22 minutes in, we dropped out once with the connection. But after that, I haven't had any indication of any issues with stream connection or anything like that. Ever since that it happened one time, where just almost everybody had issues getting into the stream, I've become a little bit paranoid about that, because I don't want to have people be excited for my live stream and then not be able to actually enjoy it. That would be very annoying. Now that I'm doing the conversations with Projektor, where I go through the stream and take all of the conversation highlights, I always have the possibility to just check, because I basically watch my whole stream, right, in chunks. And anytime that there's some connection issue, you can immediately see that in the audio waveform. So when I'm editing the conversations, I will always have a look at kind of how stable the stream has been and how well the connection has been and stuff like that. I don't do that for all of them. I don't do any highlights for the feedback stream, because to be honest, the feedback stream kind of works on its own. It kind of like gets the views that it needs to get on its own, because people watch back their track for feedback anytime that they may go into production and stuff like that. But for the other streams, I note the reason why I started doing the conversations is because I noticed that the stream kind of happened and then nobody cared anymore. So for that reason, I wanted to make some actual content out of it. And I think a lot of the things that I say on my stream are very interesting, even for people that don't necessarily watch the stream live. But yeah, I'll look through it for this stream to see if there's any issues other than that issue that we had at 22 minutes. Because this is something that I want to get resolved. As I said, once I'm in the new apartment, I'll probably get just good internet, and that might solve it. It might also just be an OBS thing, but I won't know for sure until I have new internet, which in this apartment, as I said, it's just not going to happen.
So that's going to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you want to support the channel, I would love it if you guys would continue watching. So there's 2 videos on your screen that you can click on right now to continue watching. I hope you enjoyed them, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.